of how to work safely and to take responsibility of the health and safety of those that you have a duty of care for. There may be health and safety considerations specific to your area of practice, such as fire safety, working at height, or asbestos risks. The RICS Pathway Guide sets out the relevant knowledge, Level 1, and practical application, Level 2, for these competencies. However, you do not need to have experienced everything listed, as this will depend on your experience and role. This chapter will explain what you should know concerning health and safety, covering the main requirements of Level 1. Legislation. The key primary legislation relating to health and safety at work in the UK is the Health and Safety at Work, etc. Act 1974. We will also discuss a wealth of secondary legislation or statutory instruments which provide further sector-specific legislation. The 1974 Act is enforced by the Health and Safety Executive, HSE, alongside local authorities. It requires employers to, as far as reasonably practical, ensure employees' health and safety and welfare at work. This includes staff training, welfare provision, safe working environments, and the provision of information, which is reflected in the RICS guidance that we will discuss later in this chapter. If an employer has more than five employees, they must have a written health and safety policy. An employer's breach of the 1974 Act constitutes a criminal offence and can lead to an unlimited fine or up to 2 years imprisonment. A director or manager can also be liable for their company's breach if it was committed with consent or through neglect. An employee can also be held personally liable if they intentionally or recklessly interfere or misuse of anything provided concerning health and safety. The Workplace Health and Safety and Welfare Regulations 1992 apply to most workplaces, apart from construction sites or involving construction work, and cover various health and safety issues such as ventilation, workstations, falling objects, and windows. The Corporate Manslaughter and Homicide Act 2007 was a seminal piece of legislation defining the criminal offence of corporate manslaughter or corporate homicide in Scotland. This is where the actions of a company, example management failure, lead to a gross breach of their duty of care and the death of an employee or contractor. The penalties include an unlimited fine, imprisonment, and disqualification of a member or senior management team members as a company director or directors. Surveyors must also be aware of the Occupiers Liability Act 1957 and 1984. The 1957 Act confirms that the occupier or landlord in control of premises must take reasonable care to ensure the reasonable safety of visitors who have implied or expressed permission to be there or legal right of entry. The level of care depends on the nature of the visitors, so as much as higher duty is owed to children than skilled visitors who should be aware of the risk and measures to prevent harm. Under the 1957 Act, adequate warning and signage may discharge the liability of if enable visitors to remain reasonably safe on site. The 1984 Act applies to trespasses rather than visitors. The trespasses are not limited onto a property and their presence is unknown and not consented to the 1984 Act applies where the occupier or landlord in control of premises is aware of a danger and has a reasonable grounds to believe that a trespasser may come into the vicinity of this danger. A common duty of care is established to take reasonable care for trespassers, although this is a lower duty of care than is owed to visitors under the 1957 Act. While the 1957 Act permits claims for death, personal injury and property damage, the 1984 Act only permits claims for the first two, i.e. not for property damage. Another essential health and safety issue that surveyors must be aware of is asbestos. Simply put, asbestos kills, so we must be mindful of the risks to advise for our clients diligently and keep ourselves and others safe on site. Asbestos is a naturally occurring hazardous material, fibrous mineral silicate, and harmful to death. If disturbed, it releases fibers into the atmosphere, which, if inhaled, can lead to asbestos, a form of cancer. Asbestos comes in three forms: crucidolite, which is blue, amosite, which is brown, and chrysolite, which is white. Blue and brown asbestos were banned in the UK in 1985, whilst white asbestos was finally banned in 1999. Asbestos was historically used in many building materials. If a building was constructed pre-2000, you should always assume that asbestos may be present. Common asbestos containing materials, ACMs, so that stands for asbestos containing materials: acoustic plaster, adhesives, ceiling tiles, cement pipes, decorative plaster, ducting, fire curtains and doors, fireproofing, pipe insulation, roof felt, textured paints such as Artex and coatings, vinyl floor tiles, wallboard. Regulation 4 of the Control of Asbestos Regulations 2012 imposes a legal duty to manage asbestos. If it is present or presumed to be present, the duty holder under the regulations will either be the owner, example, vacant premises, or occupier, example, tenant with an FRI lease, responsible for repairing and maintaining commercial premises and the common parts of domestic premises. In multi-let properties, the duty may be shared between both parties. Where a managing agent is instructed, the landlord duty holder cannot delegate their statutory duty to manage asbestos. However, the landlord can claim contractually or in tort for non-contractual duty against the managing agent. If any action or inaction contributes to the landlord's failure to comply as a duty holder, the managing agent will also have a duty to manage asbestos risks under the Health and Safety at Work, etc. Act 1974. If the landlord is absent, the duty holder may acquire additional duty holder responsibilities as they may be considered to be in charge of the property. Where the duties to manage under Regulation 4 does not apply, a duty arises under Sections 2 and 3 of the Health and Safety Act at Work, etc. Act 1974 to minimise the risk of asbestos in domestic premises. The Defective Premises Act 1972 and Homes Fitness for Human Habitation Act 2018 also emphasise this duty in domestic premises. Okay. In the event of substantial, I'm going to screenshot that. In the event of the substantial breach of the regulations, and the penalties include unlimited fines and up to 2 years imprisonment in a property is suspected to contain asbestos, it is legal requirement to commission an asbestos survey and report. This will identify and record the location, amount and type of ACMs. A management plan should be prepared to state how the risk of any ACMs present will be managed, including an asbestos register, recording the location and condition of the ACMs. This will be used to manage ACMs during everyday occupation, and use appropriate action should be taken to manage, repair or remove the asbestos. In line with the survey and report, the asbestos register should be updated annually or more frequently if the risk of deterioration of the ACMs is high. The management plan should be reviewed every 6 months or after refurbishment, change of use or changes in company procedures. The management plan and register should be provided to anyone inspecting or working in the property. However, if the premises are to be refurbished or demolished, then a refurbishment demolition survey will be required. If asbestos needs to be removed, it will be categorized as licensable high risk, for example, work involving loose fill insulation or asbestos millboard, or non-licensable. Lower risk, example, maintenance work involving asbestos cement, products of asbestos containing vinyl floor tiles. A complete list is provided on the HSE website.